term revenue alignment is on every revenue leader's mind these days. It's about getting sales, marketing, customer success, revenue operations all aligned in their goals and processes. As a company, ourselves included, this alignment helps us achieve our objectives efficiently, which is especially relevant right now. So we have set out to answer the ultimate how-to question: how to create revenue alignment.
Over the course of this season, you'll hear how different revenue teams get to their alignment. And it's not always happily ever after from day one. Conflicting priorities, agendas, limited resources, even different personalities can create friction. We've all been there. The key is getting out there and staying out there to achieve more together. I'm Christian Kletzel.
And I'm Trinity Nguyen.
This is the first 100 Days, a show for revenue practitioners by revenue practitioners, exploring how to build an aligned revenue engine, team, process, tech stack, one practical tip at a time.
And to help us on our journey today, here's Christina Nalband.
My name is Christina Nalband. I am the Director of Sales at Alyce.
And Nick Bennett.
Leading evangelism and customer marketing, but I was hired originally to build an ABM program from scratch and then moved into field marketing, which is what I've done for the last 10 years. And now trying to pave new paths. Alyce is a B2B gifting platform. And funny enough, I actually purchased it at a previous company years ago. And that's what drew me back into coming here. It's all about the personalization aspect and relating to people beyond just the regular persona that they are. Everyone knows that in your 9 to 5, you're a marketer or you're a salesperson or you're on product or whatever. But what are you passionate about in your 5 to 9? And how can you connect to people and build relationships on a deeper level?
And here's our conversation, starting first with how all great stories start, the beginning. Can you share a little bit how you guys started working together? I'm assuming that's when you both joined Alyce, but maybe you can give you some context of when you guys started working closely together.
Christina, when did you join? Because I joined in February of last year. When did you join again?
I joined Alyce in May of last year, so
Okay.
It's like 3 months after you. Yep.
All right. Yeah, and that makes sense. And honestly, I feel like ABM or field marketing, you're always working with the sales team. Like the sales team is my internal customer. And so, Christina's been nothing but an amazing partner in literally everything that we do. And it's funny because I actually go to her more than I go to our CRO. And just being able to have that relationship with sales to be able to push through any type of initiatives from the marketing side. At the end of the day, it's all like one team, one dream, right?
Yeah.
And so if you can kind of showcase how that looks, especially as a product that sells to marketers and salespeople, it just really helps.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing too has been, let's say there's a account executive, salesperson that has a customer, right? And they have a customer call that they need someone to be on. Who's better than someone like Nick, who at Alyce, he not only was a previous customer of Alyce, but his day to day is trying to figure out what our potential customer needs. So I think our relationship for me formed when we would tag Nick into a call to not sell, right? But to be hey, I've been in your shoes before. This is how we're doing this internally. And that just changes the game because it takes that aggressive sales motion out of it and kind of brings a new face. And I don't want it to be an aggressive sales motion, right? I just want to find out why gifting would help you. And I want to tell you how we can do that. So I think that's when for me, I was oh, wow, who's Nick? And then I think the relationship just kind of snowballed from there.
And that's such a powerful story. I think we should hire more UG users because ultimately it's I used it, I loved it, Alyce.
Yep.
I used it, I loved it. Here's why. It's by definition authentic, right?
And well, that's the best sales story too. Whether it's someone in marketing that you hire that's used the product before, but if you can hire salespeople that have been an end user of your product, that changes the game. That's very powerful when you can get on a call with somebody and say, hey, I work here because I love this product and I actually used it before. Let me tell you how we used to use it. That's super powerful.
Christian, in case you forgot, I was your first customer in my previous company. You just completely forgot.
True. Glad you joined.
Thank you. So you mentioned that you guys started working together when you joined Alyce, and Nick, you touched on this. You joined Alyce to build out the account-based program. Can you share a little bit, like, how was it before? What drove the need for the organization to put that program in place?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, as a gifting company, I'll tell you, our entire strategy before moving to an account-based model was very much spray and pray. Let's just gift as many people as we can and book meetings out of it. And that's a terrible use case if you're like only relying on that, especially as you scale. And so we moved to an account-based model where it was like, all right, we have 3 tiers. Our tier 1 accounts, there was 50 accounts. Our tier 2, there was probably about 350 or so. And then there's the tier 3s, which is your serviceable addressable market, which is everyone else. And so out of those 50 tier 1 accounts, we were able to open almost 60% of those in a quarter and a half. The issue was when you have a small team, from a bandwidth perspective and resource perspective, I was so focused on the creation of pipeline that I wasn't focused on the acceleration of it. And that's why I think it's so important to enable sales. Like, I think that's a huge piece that goes underrated. Like, working with sales as a field marketer, ABM marketer, or whatever, you have to enable them as well to be successful, because what happened was they treated all these opportunities just like any other opportunity that they had. There was no white glove treatment or VIP treatment. The only thing that changed was the budget that we spent for the accounts.
And from your perspective, Christina, were you already in an account-based program before you joined Alyce?
Yeah, I've done it a couple of different ways. Like, the first company I tried it at, we did not so much leaning on field marketing or marketing efforts, but more of like this sales ABM strategy, which it's like each account executive gets, 80 to 100 accounts, and we are going to put all of our efforts into making sure that they become a customer, and kind of proving that model out first. And then once we saw success there and proved that we could do it, then we would invest marketing dollars into figuring that out. So I've seen that be super successful. And I think, and maybe this is something we'll get to, but the unique thing about what Nick is doing and what the marketing team is doing at Alyce is like, we're being proactive about that. Like, obviously we started with gifting, right? We're eating our own dog food, as they say. We're gifting as many people as possible, getting the product out there, which helps, right? Like, it's not the wrong strategy. It's just like, you can't scale, like Nick said, doing that. So I think it's cool that now we're taking a proactive approach when we think about, okay, like, marketing is figuring out ABM and now sales is included in the process. I think that's where it's getting sticky and actually like fun, because we know these leads will be worth it.
And I think that's always a little bit the issue if you start with one or the other. Like, if sales starts with the account-based program, but marketing doesn't, or the other way around, is that you only get half the treatment. So sales uses their attention and their dollars on this, and marketing uses their attention and their dollar on these accounts. And maybe if we're lucky, there's a little bit of an overlap. But ultimately, I think that's why a lot of money gets wasted, a lot of effort gets wasted.
Yep, exactly.
I was going to say too, it's like, you spend all of this money. If you don't have buy-in from an account-based strategy from the top down, it's going to fail. There's people say there's no silos in their company, but I know that's false, because even if you have the best sales and marketing alignment, there's silos somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And if you don't have your CEO or CRO or VP, whatever, that's proactively working to push this out as a strategy and embracing it from a company perspective, it's going to fail.
Even like, there's so many different pieces of it too. It has to be a company-wide initiative, right? Because if your executive team is on board, your marketing team is on board, and your sales team is on board, but you don't have ops in this, and you can't turn back and say, hey, how many meetings did we book? Like, what's the conversion? Like, what are the metrics? Like, then it's like, what are we even doing this for? And I've seen that happen, especially at early stage startups, where it's like, everybody's aligned. And then we all get in a meeting, and it's like you're just assuming if it's working based on, Johnny booked a meeting yesterday, but I think it's really crucial to have ops involved so you can have like, a dashboard in Salesforce or whatever like tools you're using so you really can see is this successful and that there's data behind it.
I think realigned is always very, very easy at the beginning, but
Yeah.
it's so much harder to say after 100 days we're still aligned. And I'm very curious about within those 100 days, where the biggest challenges.
I think it's just the falling off from the communication perspective. It's, if you're not having regularly scheduled calls with the sales team or your counterparts or whatever, it's just going to go like things are going to fall through the cracks. People get busy. Sales has deals to close. Marketing is trying to do 30 different things as well. And if you're not, whether it's a weekly like stand up or a bi-weekly stand up or whatever, you have to have something, because if communication isn't there and you're not all aligning on the KPIs and metrics that matter, then things are going to start to crumble. And then you're going to wonder 100 days in, well, look, this isn't really moving the needle, but are you trying to use this to move up market, or are you trying to use this for your commercial or like mid-market type of accounts? And the deal cycles are going to be completely different. It depends on the industry and all of that as well.
So if I go back to like the beginning of building up this program, you guys came from different companies, different experience. You understand the value of being aligned, but the actual doing it sometimes get really tricky, especially with change management, right? Sounds like Alyce probably was in a different model, probably the MQL world in the past, and now trying to move into the marketing qualified account, MQA. Can you walk, like if someone's listening to this right now and like, hey, we're going through this right now, like the day one of your first 100 days of building this program, what are the different things you guys experienced, like the good and bad, that they should be thinking about?
I think, you can actually have a dual funnel, and you could use MQLs and MQAs, and you could split your funnel where the MQLs are solely going to be hand raisers and you're driving those people inbound. The MQAs will be focused on that outbound true like ABM motion. And I think the piece where, and we kind of, I don't want to say like Christina and I misaligned, but I think between sales and marketing, there was an issue of like, what is an MQA? What does it follow? Because honestly, we use an intent platform where all we did was when an account hit decision of purchase within that platform, it 6QA'd and we call it an MQA. But what does that mean? Like, what is the company side? What is the sweet spot that matters for your ICP? And so, there was some bumpy spots. And plus we had a lot of turnover on the sales team, a lot of turnover on the marketing team, where when you go from a Series A company to a Series B company, some people aren't comfortable with that growth and the pressure from the board to deliver on higher numbers. And that was something where we had a lot of people leave when we made that change like last year. And now it's just, we actually on January 1st kicked off like a brand new program. We're actually not calling it ABM anymore. We're calling it targeted marketing, because really at the core of ABM, that's what it is. You're targeted marketing to a subset of accounts that are in your sweet spot. And we changed what the MQA definition is. And I think, Christina and the rest of the sales team is very much aligned with like the marketing side of things. And although I don't have as much to do with that anymore, Christina and I still talk, almost daily.
And from the sales side, Christina, like how was it from the sales perspective? I mean, sales naturally have target accounts. You guys can always, So when putting this program together, like what was the sentiment then from the sales side?
So something I would have done differently, or I think would help people who may be going through this right now, it's like it all starts at expectation setting and education. And I know what ABM is, right? And I know what building a target account list looks like. And I know what an intent platform is. But, we have sellers that maybe they came from a different background, or maybe they're from an inbound funnel that they're just taking calls. Like, I think education on like what an intent platform is and why we're doing this, and that would be step one. And I think we did that at Alyce, but I don't think reps were really listening. So like ensuring that was like really in their heads of like, hey, why is this so important to us, right? Like, why are we kind of like pivoting our strategy? So yeah, I think that's certainly something that I would have done differently, because reps will take it more seriously. And the second thing is like, don't just start with everyone. I would highly, highly suggest like proving out this model with a rep or a couple of reps that are good at maybe they're a little bit more scrappy, entrepreneurial, and they would like to take on this initiative, which actually helps with like giving people something new to do. Improve it out, right? It's like, hey, these two people did this and they hit X amount percentage over their number. And then it's like, oh, how'd they do that? And that's people, salespeople want to make money, right? And if you can find a way to incentivize salespeople to do whatever it is that you want, they're going to get interested. So I think education and starting with a subset of people are two things that I would have definitely done differently.
When you don't do the education piece, I think this is super important. But what happens if you don't, or maybe you have new reps that join and didn't get the education? Like, are they going after different accounts, different persona, different messaging? Like, what are they doing, and what's the most dangerous one?
Well, I think what's dangerous is like they see marketing as, why is Nick Bennett's team hitting up my accounts, right? Like, now why I built out my account, and this is just like the black and white view of it. It's like I built out my account list. And now marketing sending them emails too, and like, how like sales reps get worried. They're like, are we bombarding them? Or no, we're targeting them in different ways. And it's like this sales can get this ownership of their target account list. And I think that can become a not so great area in a company because it's like separating marketing and sales. Whereas like when there's education behind it, it's like, oh, that's awesome, right? Like Nick and his team are hitting up the accounts that are my target or my ICP, and like they're helping me get into that account. So I think it's just like the education around it is huge because it can pull the two like parts of the business apart versus bring them together,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember another piece is, and you guys touch on a little bit, is defining what is the ICP and get everyone align on that. And then the target account list is another component. In my previous life, we were trying to build an ABM from scratch, and we got alignment initially. We got the target account list initially, and then marketing went off and do all the marketing thing, advertising and nurture and all that list. And lo and behold, a quarter later, when we kind of look at the number, the sales team actually only worked on half of the list. And the other ones are like, nah, it's not that interesting anymore. So it was really hard to like the stay aligned is really hard, which Nick touched on, like the communication and ongoing communication and buy-in and education is so important.
Also, one thing I'm going to add to this is because a mistake I've made as a leader is trusting that the accounts are the right accounts that we're going after. I mean, if you're not going after the right accounts, you could have a standing meeting every day and we're not going to see success, right? Like that is the foundation that you build everything off of. And I would not suggest, especially, it all comes back to education, especially if reps are not aligned with what we're actually doing. Just make sure that the target account list are actually people that you can sell to instead of trusting that they are. I would say that that's a huge part of this. Which is hard in itself, right? Like, how do you pick the right accounts? That's a whole other conversation.
Right. Well, that one's tricky. Give me a moment where there was something that was not aligned or something a little bit bumpy. How did the two of you come together to kind of like resolve it?
I think one was just around like the communication. Like before even like Christina got there, as she got there, like it was literally right when there was starting to be some like changeover. Like we lost our head of marketing, we lost some people on the marketing side, some sales reps left. And so I think it was just rebuilding up that trust.
Yeah.
Like, and I remember like when Christina started, because we had this conversation where like she was frustrated, not at me, but as like marketing as a whole. Like, what are you doing? Why aren't we hitting these accounts? Like, what are we actually doing? Does marketing just sit there and like send off emails all day? And so I think it was just having conversations to figure out like, what are we actually doing to move the needle at the end of the day? And it goes to the larger conversation of like having the alignment or having the communication to be open and talk about challenges and talk about ways that you can overcome it together, versus like me just being like angry and being like, screw her, like I'm just gonna go and continue to do my thing. She doesn't write my check, which I would never say, but like I could have. But yeah, so it's just, I think that would kind of be some of the things. It was not a weird time that she joined, but there was just a lot of changes. And that's a lot of pressure for someone that's expected to come in, lead a team, and hit a number. And then someone like myself who's like trying to build out a program from scratch.
I love that you guys came to an understanding. Like Nick, you just mentioned you understood. Like Christina joined crazy time, crazy number to hit. Like that kind of understanding is sometimes we're too busy in our own work and our own team's agenda and priorities that we forget that the other person also have the same amount of pressure. How did you guys reconcile that? Was it over coffee? Was it something else? How did you guys reconcile?
I think it was just like through Zooms. Like we were actually, I mean, she lives in, I think, Florida, and so like, I mean, she's from the Boston area, but like we've actually never met in person yet.
It's wild.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing too, like a lot of times, and Alyce will say like, say it in the room, right? And that's like a company wide mantra of please don't hold this in, right? Because that doesn't do, I think what happens is like when I'm new and Nick's been here for a couple months, it's kind of like, okay, I'm thinking these things, he's thinking other things, but if we're not talking to each other, sometimes you just have to have an uncomfortable conversation. It's like, hey, what's going on? Right? Like, help me help you. Whereas I think people are afraid to have that open, blunt conversation, and then nothing gets solved, right? Like everything remains complacent. So I think like, and that's not going to be everybody, right? Like some people are just going to keep to themselves, and then like marketing keeps themselves, sales keeps themselves, and you won't see things change. I think I really believe that starts at the top, right? There has to be that like, I happen to be this type of person on my own, right? And maybe Nick is too, but when your executive team is allowing you to like say it in the room, and that's a company-wide thing, you feel more comfortable having uncomfortable conversations. Like that's how you get things done. Sometimes that's like the best way to build relationships is like, ooh, I didn't really like that they just said that, but let's work on it. And that's how you build a company, really. And I think that over Zoom calls, really.
I was just going to add to that too. It's like, do I always like agree with like what our CRO says, for example? Like, no, but even like, just like, you would think that like you would want marketing to be more involved since like that is the ICP of like who we sell to. But sometimes it goes back to that like solo, like just kind of like thinking in like a single mindset. And just, I think you have to kind of come together as like, that's why I'm such a fan of like revenue teams. Like, okay, you've got rev ops, you've got sales, you've got marketing, CS, they all are a revenue team. They all roll up under the CRO, but it's all like, it needs to be taken through KPIs, through metrics. Like it needs to kind of fall under that one bucket. Because if not, marketing is just going to be like, and we don't do this, but like marketing is going to be like, well, I'm just going to pump out as many MQLs as possible. Sales doesn't get paid on MQLs. I was in sales before I moved to marketing. And so like, it's so frustrating to when I talk to other marketers that say, I'm just going to pump out MQLs because that's all I'm going to be comped on. And they know that that's not what sales cares about, but they don't care. They're just looking to get paid at the end of the day.
I love the fact because like, we just worked on our OKRs, and it was also about like, okay, everyone is really good at doing their own OKRs, like sales department does, but are there actually OKRs that maybe are even competitive to marketing? Or how can you support the marketing KPIs or OKRs? And so I feel like that's where the leadership comes in once again, because if your goals in like your KPIs in marketing or in sales are completely different, then I'm always drawn towards fulfilling my OKRs over helping my colleague. Did something change? Like when you, especially such a big initiative, like, I don't know if you work with KPIs or other types OKRs, like, is this something that is reflected in the goals that you're setting for the department, for the quarter or the year?
Yeah, it is now. It used to be very like single-minded where like marketing had theirs, sales had theirs, people team had theirs, like everyone had the individual ones that somewhat rolled up into like the business initiatives. But this year we actually just had our kickoff recently. It was a little late, but oh well. And so we're actually like now focusing more on like a collaborative effort so that everyone's rolls up into like core pieces. So how can we help the business, help marketing, help sales? Like everyone's fighting towards that same thing. We all know what we need to achieve now. And I don't know why there wasn't as much alignment before, but it just kind of took some time to work things out. And I think, this year is going to provide like a lot of success with that new mindset.
The last few years, if you go back to like 2017, 15 or so, no one really talks so much about revenue alignment or revenue team as one. I'm kind of curious on like what changed? Like what is the reason for this? We understand the value of it. We achieve better when we do things together, going after the same accounts, the same buyers. But why no one ever talked about that before? It's very interesting. I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is interesting. So the first time that I like really, really focused on it, I was working for a company called Clary. So they're in the RevOps space. They're a forecasting platform. And so we were like a revenue team, and literally like the whole product was to bring revenue teams together to forecast better through sales, through marketing, make it like so you don't have to do it in Excel every single day. And that was really the first time where I was like, wow, like this is what it actually looks like when it works. And you see all these customers that are going off to IPO because they can forecast and hit their forecast within 1% 5 weeks out. And it was really nice to see. And then I went on to do marketing for engineers and developers. And I realized very quick that is not the audience for me. And like MarTech or sales tech is definitely where I belong. But yeah, I don't know. It's just, that was really like the first one. That was back in like 2018 that I really, really saw it work.
I'm only used to the sales and marketing alignment, and I can't believe it's actually not the norm. I don't know how that even works.
I think it has to do with the shift of the world. I truly believe like it's 2022, and I mean, think about 5 years ago, things were so different, right? Like the whole say it in the room mentality was just not a thing. I mean, look at all of us right now. Like we're remote. That would have never happened 5 years ago, right? Maybe on a webinar it would, but not working. Like I've never even met Nick. So I just think like within the past couple of years and everything that happened with COVID, sometimes things happen because you have to do it, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. And I think like we've been so stretched as a world and as a country, and every country has been stretched at like, kind of like, oh, wow, we have to do this now. We have to think differently because our goals are harder to achieve. And yeah, so I think it's just been a shift in mindset, really.
Yeah, I think that's such a good call out. Like, I think it's just necessary. Like sales is getting harder. It's getting harder to reach people. So out of necessity, okay, I'll talk to marketing. Okay, I'll align with them.
Yeah, it's like, wow, my number just got way harder to hit. Nick, can you help me out with this?
And then the issue is like all these net revenue numbers go up, but do you think marketing's budget's going up? Absolutely not. It's getting flat or like slashed.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, so you expect me to produce this much higher, yet you're not giving me the resources. And so it's like, it becomes so hard.
If other companies keep the budget the same, we'll keep yours the same as well, Trinity.
It's already set. But not just marketing, right? Sales, the same thing too. Like the quota went up, but doesn't mean they can hire as many more reps also. So like everyone is just, it's just harder for everyone, I think. So at the last few minutes, so just some like rapid fire questions before we wrap up. First time trying this, I'm gonna just do it for fun and just go along with me, guys. So Nick, easy question for you. Has Christina ever had donuts for breakfast?
I remember her putting a LinkedIn post about it, so I'm gonna go with yes.
Damn it. Christina, do you want to add anything? Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big fan of donuts, so.
Donut and coffee.
Yes.
Christina, how old is Nick's daughter?
Nick's daughter is 5.
3.
Close.
Close.
Should have asked Nick's son. I don't know if you have a son, but.
Oh yeah, that would have.
I don't.
That would be a trick question. Next one. Which communication channel does Christina prefer?
I know it's not Slack.
Definitely not Slack.
I'm gonna go with, honestly, I can reach it quicker on LinkedIn than I probably can on Slack.
What?
He's right about that. I'm not a fan of Slack. And I have to add to this. I'm not a fan of Slack because people create so many different, are they called channels, that it gets like watered down, and like I'm getting so many notifications that it's overwhelming for me. I would say text message is the easiest way to reach me. Yeah.
Yeah, she wrote a post about it. I'm like, cool. Actually, I'm the same way too. I don't pick up phone calls, but I will reply to text.
It's just easy. It's like the easiest thing for me.
Yeah.
And I guess you could say the same thing about Slack, but I don't know. I just prefer. It's too bad that maybe Slack has this, but if they had like let's say like I messaged Nick on Slack and it went to his phone, if he could set that up, like that would be a pretty good thing.
Last question, Christina, does Nick pre-write his LinkedIn content or on the day of?
I don't know. I would say he probably does it on the day of.
Yep. Yeah, I don't pre-write anything. I'm terrible at taking notes just in general. So if I don't remember it, I don't even keep notes on my phone.
That's amazing. That's a really good skill. Like my content team is trying to be like Nick, and it's just, how does he write on the day of? They get so stressed out. Before we wrap it up, if you guys want to give any kind of like shout out to any of the programs or communities that you're driving, I know most of you are involved in founding communities and different like coffee chat sessions. Want to go for it? And then we just like kind of put it in the show.
I launched a brand new community called the Revenue Era. So it's basically for revenue marketers that, it's a mixture of a free job board. We have over 100 companies that have submitted jobs to it with compensation in a lot of cases, which don't be afraid to talk about comp in a public aspect. But also, it's for people that just want to level up their careers. So it's been really, really good. And I've been a huge fan of communities throughout, honestly, COVID. It's just been a great resource for me to meet other people.
So I'm actually building, I launched something yesterday on, it's a negotiation strategy on, is it Gumroad? Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I launched it's free, and it's a course on negotiation. It's 9 slides, and I'm giving access for now for free. So if people just want to go to my LinkedIn and check out the negotiation tactics on Gumroad. And I'm also starting a podcast, which I've actually recorded. My website is ChristinaNalband.com, and that's where you will get access to it. But I literally just have not set the time to edit my first episode. So just stay tuned for it.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the first 100 days. Be sure to hit that follow button as we get more revenue teams to share their stories every week.